There are double and triple historical ironies as the new president, Joe Biden, takes office. He had to suspend a campaign many decades ago because he took a few lines from a British politician's speech and used them as his own. Well, let's take a look at all the pirates and thieves who have occupied that office or tried to occupy that office. And let's start with the famous John F. Kennedy, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but rather what you can do for your country." Well, his speechwriter, Theodore Sorensen, must have known that that very thought permeated numerous speeches for about 100 years. And Kennedy would have known that too as an historian. Give a listen. 18th century French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, "As soon as any man says of the affairs of state, 'What does it matter to me?' the state may be given up as lost." The mayor of Haverhill, Massachusetts, said in a eulogy, "Here may we be reminded that a man is most honored, not by which a city may do for him, but by that which he has done for the city." Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was no slouch at turning a great phrase himself, said, "It is now the moment when, by common consent, we pause to become conscious of our national life and to rejoice in it, to recall what our country has done for each of us, and to ask ourselves what we can do for our country in return." 1884. Similar thought. Guy Emerson, in The New Frontier, a study of the American liberal spirit, italicized this quote late in the book: "Men and women are born to put more into their country than they take out of it." Even JFK had used a version of the phrase before. At the Democratic National Convention, he said, "The new frontier sums up not what I intend to offer the American people, but what I intend to ask of them." Similar thought. On September 5th, 1960, in Detroit, he said, "The new frontier is not what I promise I am going to do for you. The new frontier is what I ask you to do for your country." Similar thought again. In American political life, it was reformer Teddy Roosevelt who put these ideas on the table in 1910. He said, "Oh, my fellow citizens, each of you carries on your shoulders not only the burden of doing well for the sake of your country, but the burden of doing well and of seeing that this nation does well for the sake of mankind." And then doesn't that bring in the second thought of the Kennedy inaugural, not only ask not, but then, "My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what together we can do for mankind," or some such sentiment. Not content with that, Teddy Roosevelt emphasized a few paragraphs later that equality of opportunity means the Commonwealth will get from every citizen the highest service of which he is capable. Warren Harding edited and polished the lines for the 1920 campaign. He said, "If we can prove a representative popular government under which a citizenship seeks what it may do for the government and country, rather than what the country may do for individuals." But Harding was also calling for isolationism and limited government, not the activism of JFK. In 1928, Herbert Hoover foreshadowed the second aspect of the JFK inaugural quote when he spoke of an individual's opportunity for greater and greater service, not alone from man to man in our own land, but from our country to the whole world. And this is part of a trend in inaugurals and States of the Union, where America became less and less isolationist and more aware of its place in the world. In 1932, FDR reworked the thought into this: "The issue of government has always been whether individual men and women will have to serve some system of government or economics, or whether a system of government and economics exists to serve individual men and women." There's FDR walking the tightrope between fascism and communism. FDR may have also been providing JFK with a sort of template for JFK's Ich bin ein Berliner speech about 30 years later. Listen to what John F. Kennedy said. "There are many people in the world who really don't understand, or say they don't, what is the great issue between the free world and the communist world. Let them come to Berlin. There are some who say communism is the wave of the future. Let them come to Berlin. And there are some who say in Europe and elsewhere, we can work with the communists. Let them come to Berlin. And there are even a few who say that it is true that communism is an evil system, but it permits us to make economic progress. Let them come to Berlin. The construction closely resembles a New Deal speech by FDR in 1932. Listen to the similarity. Go into the home of the businessman. He knows what the tariff has done for him. Go into the home of the factory worker. He knows why goods do not move. Go into the home of the farmer. He knows how the tariff has helped to ruin him. Politicians rightly quote aphorisms and bon mots from the past, but they are also just plain thieves and pirates, quoting their own speeches over and over again on the campaign, and this bores journalists. The speech is often called a Gainsburger, meaning it's just something that is doled out and the same old stuff with a lack of nutrition or surprise. The exception was Adlai Stevenson, who insisted on making a new speech on almost every occasion, almost killed his speechwriters. They were known as the Elks Club gang. They were in Springfield, Illinois, constantly busy. His speechwriters included Harvard professor, biological biographer, and Pulitzer Prize winner Arthur Schlesinger Jr., transplanted Canadian economist John Kenneth Galbraith, and Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Archibald MacLeish. Richard Nixon borrowed from himself, since his forgotten man appeal in his 1968 acceptance speech can also be found in his 1940s campaigns for Congress and Senate. Borrowing from a 1966 hit song, Tell It Like It Is, and a phrase used by young people in the 1960s, Nixon wanted the truth, to see it like it is and tell it like it is, to find the truth, to speak the truth, and to live the truth. In 1972, George McGovern borrowed from Pete Seeger and the Byrds and Ecclesiastes in Turn, 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 when he referenced the music of our children, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. He also borrowed from Woody Guthrie, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. He didn't credit anyone. Echoing John F. Kennedy's inaugural, Ronald Reagan, years later, said, "Let our friends and those who may wish us ill take note." In the same 1980 acceptance speech, he quoted from Thomas Paine and gave credit, but he only credited an American president of the Great Depression when he used the phrase rendezvous with destiny. Well, that was FDR, of course, railing against big and wasteful government. Reagan had, of course, originally been a New Deal FDR Democrat. Building suspense, Reagan only named Roosevelt near the end of his speech. Bill Clinton brilliantly stole the Republican mantra of the forgotten middle class for police, tax cuts, and small government, and against generous welfare in 1992. He spoke of a new covenant between the government and the people. Senator Obama turned a Bill Clinton line on its head when he bemoaned those who would elevate what is wrong with America above all that we know is right with America. He may also have provided a faint echo of a Bobby Kennedy line from the night Martin Luther King was assassinated, when he stated, "We have a choice in this country." There's an echo of Winston Churchill's "Fight them on the beaches" speech in Obama's protests and struggles on the streets and in the courts through a civil war and civil disobedience. But Churchill didn't invent that construction. He got it from the children's story, The Jungle Book. There's an echo from a quote often attributed to Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who may have said words to the effect, "The right to swing my fist ends at the point of another person's nose." Obama's take was, "Your dreams do not have to come at the expense of my dreams." In 1932, FDR spoke of the greatest good for the greatest number of our citizens, without crediting John Stuart Mill. Modern audiences may recall George H.W. Bush's 1,000 Points of Light speech at the Republican Convention in 1988, which helped him cut Dukakis's 20-point lead in the polls. The phrase may have been inspired by previously published poetry, and there's an echo from Herbert Hoover's 1928 campaign, in which Hoover said, "Government now touches at 1,000 points the intricate web of economic and social life." Nothing new under the sun. Well, that's a borrow from Ecclesiastes too, isn't it?